Good afternoon and welcome to the Jerusalem Fund and Palestine Center. Those of you who are sitting on the sides, we would love for you to come and kind of sit toward the middle if possible. Or this side maybe, yeah, sure. My name is Azam and I'm the Executive Director here, and we're really delighted to have all of you with us. Being Palestinian makes me smile. This is the title of our talk today. We're happy and smiling to have Palestinian-American comedian Amer Zahr with us. This is sort of a prelude to his Kennedy Center performance this coming Friday night, where he and 3 other comedians will be making an audience of hundreds laugh. I believe this is the first time that Palestinian-American comedians have performed at the Kennedy Center, and we're very proud of them. We're also very proud and happy to be the organizational sponsor of this event. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, I would suggest you get them very soon, because I hear from Amer that they're going fast. There are very few left. Today, however, we'll be hearing from Amer about his views on comedy and its role in sharing with the larger American public the experience of Palestinians, Palestinian Americans, Arab Americans, and Muslim Americans. As a child of first-generation Palestinian refugee parents, Amer mines his background to analyze, to poke fun at, and write satire about Arab and American culture, and where the two intersect, or perhaps not intersect, in interesting and amusing ways. And I know he just came back from 2 weeks in Palestine, so I hope he'll be sharing some of those experiences with us too. Amer Zahr is a comedian who has performed on campuses, community events, and festivals worldwide, including a number of cities: New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, San Francisco, Detroit, Chicago, Cairo, Beirut, Amman, Kuwait, Dubai, Jerusalem, Ramallah, Bethlehem, and Nazareth. He's produced numerous comedy productions, including 3 of his own, and the annual 1001 Laughs Dearborn Comedy Festival at the Arab American National Museum in Michigan. This is a comedian who holds an MA in Middle East Studies, as well as a law degree, both from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. In fact, he also works as an adjunct professor at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, specializing in how American law has affected Arab Americans. Amer Zahr also writes a blog called The Civil Arab, and it's civilarab.com, and has published a book called Being Palestinian Makes Me Smile. He'll be reading excerpts from it today, and we'll have copies of the book for sale after the talk. And from a reliable source, I understand he also plays oud and sings. This is a multi-talented and very impressive individual that we have with us today. We'll ask him to talk for about 30 or so minutes, after which we'll open the floor for questions and discussion. So, Amer, it's a great pleasure to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thanks, Zaina. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks to the internet virtual world out there, if anyone's watching. Is anybody watching? Do we have any idea? Okay, good. I think my dad's watching because he's in Jordan, and I asked him to watch, and so he's staying up. Thank you for that introduction. I do dabble in all of those things that Zaina mentioned. However, my mom still tells people that I'm a lawyer, which is I'm not a lawyer at all, so in case anyone's wondering. But, why comedy? Why Palestinian comedy? I get asked this question a lot. What is a Palestinian doing comedy? What is there to laugh about? And I always say that we Palestinians could be very sad if we wanted to. It's very easy. If you're a Palestinian and you wanted to find reasons to be sad, it's not very difficult. You can watch the news every half an hour or so and probably find a story that could make you sad as a Palestinian. In fact, we don't even have, aside from not having a country, which is bad enough, we don't have holidays. We have a lot of commemorations. We have May 15th, which is they stole our land in 1948. We have June 5th, which is they stole our land in 1967. We have Yom al-Ard, which is they stole our land in 1976. We have a lot of they stole our land commemorations. We don't have any holidays, really. Christmas is maybe the one Palestinian holiday, but they're even trying to take that away from us. If you talk to a lot of people in America, they think that Jesus had blonde hair and blue eyes and that he was from South Carolina. He's actually... Are there any Palestinian men here today? Yes? Everybody look at that man over there. Okay? All right, that's what Jesus looked like, in case you're wondering. Jesus looked like that, okay? He didn't look like Brad Pitt. He looked like that. Not that you don't look like Brad Pitt, sir. You're a very handsome man. So these are the things that we have to deal with, right? I mean, it's very easy to be sad if you're a Palestinian. I just got back from a couple weeks in Palestine, and, it doesn't take a long time before you can be sad. But I've learned over time two things. Number one, if you can make people... We Palestinians, we love telling stories, and we love telling people about our problems. And if you can make people laugh, they listen to you. I've learned this over time. You can only tell so many stories about, in 1948 or, until people they stop listening. Laughter, though, gets people to listen to you. You might notice this at a business meeting where a guy wants to start a boring 3-hour presentation with a joke. Sometimes he's successful, sometimes he's not. But the idea is to get people kind of relaxed, and when you make people laugh, they listen to you. And Palestinians, if we need nothing else, we need people to listen to us. But I've also learned, actually, that laughter and sadness, or laughing and crying, are not that different. We've all seen somebody laugh so much that he starts crying. But sometimes you might even see somebody cry so much that he starts laughing. They're not that different. They come from the same place. You might cry at the ridiculous, and we Palestinians laugh at the ridiculous. I mean, people ask me what it's like to be a Palestinian, and I just tell them it's living in a completely alternate universe where things happen there that don't happen anywhere else in the world, and where normal things don't happen to you. I just came back from 10 days in Ramallah, and while I was there, I realized a lot of things. I mean, I go to Palestine 2 or 3 times a year. Weird things happen there. You get introduced to people in a way that you would not get introduced to anyone else anywhere in the world. I was in Jerusalem last week, and one of my friends introduced me to somebody, said, this is my friend Ahmed. He is great. He is amazing. He is the best man I have ever met in my life. He was in jail 5 years. I don't think this happens anywhere else in the world. And as I was sitting in Ramallah, somebody asked me, we were in a restaurant, and I had to get back to the hotel, so I wanted to figure out how to get there, and so I did what any good American would do. I took out my iPhone, and I got on Google Maps. Now, something you quickly realize is that there are no street names in Ramallah, at least nothing that is recognized by the world. Not by Google, for sure. And I don't know if I really want them to recognize the street names in Ramallah. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Ramallah, but they're all named after, there's Abu Jihad Lane over here and Che Guevara Boulevard over here, and it's a fairy tale. But in any case, I got on my phone, and I realized very quickly that there is no way. You can't even tell it where you're going because there's no, you can't, there's no, there's nothing. And I realized that means that you cannot, you can't order something. If you want to know what it's like to live in an alternate universe as Americans, imagine being in a place where you cannot order something off of eBay or Amazon and have it delivered to you. I mean, it's the only place in the world. Kenya, I think, you can get something delivered. I mean, I'm nothing against people of Kenya, but I'm just saying, it's the only place in the world where you cannot just get online and tell them, please send us something here. It's just a completely alternate universe. And I remember driving around the United States government, for all the problems that we have with them, does do a lot of projects in the West Bank. Now, I think this is mostly like, I don't know, guilt maybe, or whatever it is. But there's a lot of projects being put on by USAID in the West Bank. And I was in Jericho, and they were building a new street or a new community center, I forget exactly. And they have these signs that say, this project is a gift from the... Has anybody seen these before? This project is a gift from the American people to the Palestinian people. And I'd heard about those signs, but I'd never been that up and close and personal with one of those signs. And I looked at it, and I thought to myself, well, I'm in the West Bank, which is run by the Israeli military, which is fully funded by the United States government. There's a settlement right over there, which was built by the United States government. I said, isn't everything here a gift from the American people to the Palestinian people? It's an alternate universe. It's a weird place to be, but a wonderful place to be. I always tell people that I do not visit Palestine, I return to Palestine. There is no such thing as a visit for a Palestinian. We return there. And so my last return was very nice. But I missed America. I'm still an American. I missed free refills and dollar menus, and there's none of that. But it is a wonderful place. I wrote this, I don't want to say I wrote, it kind of sounds more important than it is, but I write a blog called The Civil Arab. And a lot of times I write about being Palestinian. And really, my blog is something I'm not very good with the timing of it. I'm not very good with doing it every week. But when something happens, I write. And about half of them, I would say, have to do directly with Palestine or being Palestinian. And so I compiled them about over a span of 5 years into this book called Being Palestinian Makes Me Smile, which is also the name of the comedy show that's happening Friday night at the Kennedy Center. So I want to read a couple of these things because while they are, they were written and meant to be read, but they're fun when I perform them too. I'm going to read a few of them and kind of give you a little story what happened, why I wrote one of them. I was at anyone here familiar with the Ramallah Federation of America? It's basically a family club, and they have conventions every year, people who are the original families of Ramallah. And I perform at their conventions. And so I was there a couple years ago, actually almost 4 years ago, in July of 2011. And something happened, and I felt compelled to write. This is a entry in my book called Beware, Being Palestinian is Contagious. Last weekend, I was lucky enough to perform at the annual convention of the American Federation of Ramallah, Palestine in Washington, D.C. I saw many old friends and met many new ones. I performed in 3 comedy shows, and I can tell you this, Palestinians know how to laugh, especially at themselves. But I also confirmed something else I always suspected to be true. Being Palestinian is contagious. I met a few couples at the gathering that were, for a lack of a better word, mixed. Palestinians are spread all over the world. Being Palestinian basically means you can live anywhere except Palestine. As a result, we have more mixed marriages than any other species on Earth. In America alone, we have occupied over 5 million non-Palestinians. Okay, I don't know if that number is exactly accurate, but it happens a lot. I met one particular white guy, let's call him Mark, his name really is Mark, who married a Palestinian woman. During one of my shows, I asked his father-in-law how he could let such a thing happen. It turns out his daughter was 33 when she married Mark, so that explains a lot. When single Arab women pass the age of 25, their parents tend to stop being too particular. When I asked Mark where his wife was, I noticed he was surrounded by Arab men on either side. As he identified his wife seated 2 chairs away from him, I discovered that this brother-in-law was sitting between him and his wife. I'm sure his brother-in-law was present on their first date, so I guess old habits die hard. In my comedy travels, I frequently meet white guys married to Palestinian women, and what I've noticed is that they have been Palestinianized. They love hummus, speak loudly, and march in demonstrations. They eat grape leaves, wear keffiyehs, and can recite UN Resolutions 194 and 242. They give their kids Arabic names, love garlic, and have pictures of Jerusalem in their homes. We have infected them. In a good way. Being Palestinian is cool. We Palestinians love it, so it's no wonder we rub off on others so easily. Incidentally, I have never seen the opposite happen. I've never witnessed a Palestinian marry a white American only to start suddenly saying dude, liking Sarah Palin, or overindulging in mayonnaise. I have rubbed off on many people over the years. I've had a few white girlfriends, and if they didn't know about Palestine before they dated me, they sure did after. It has caused some uncomfortable moments. I remember when Brittany and Ashley both showed up to that anti-Israeli demonstration a few years ago. It was awkward. Being Palestinian is relentless. Every Palestinian has a story. Our stories and personal histories tell of our collective struggle. And once non-Palestinians have drunk the potion, there is no cure. No Palestinian can claim to be independent of our history. No Palestinian can escape it. To live a life divorced from political reality is impossible for us. We are consumed by history even before birth. Our greatest achievement is our abiding refusal to become casualties. When non-Palestinians join the club, they quickly realize that membership is not just a matter of eating too much garlic. It comes with an acute political memory unlike any other. I'm sure many white guys remember their first meeting with their prospective Palestinian father-in-law. After he served coffee and said hello, the next words out of his mouth were, "In 1948. After hearing that talk, you have caught the bug. But all in all, it's a pretty good bug to catch. The symptoms aren't all that bad. You will start overeating. White people can eat small meals and be satisfied. We eat meals in phases. We even take breaks. You will find yourself running to the dinner table and limping away from it. You will redefine the word cousin. For us, it can mean a first cousin, a third cousin 5 times removed, or even just a friend. It can also mean a wife. You will find that you start dancing in circular line formations at weddings and celebrations. You will stomp on the floor and sweat profusely. Relatives that you didn't know you had will grab your hand and lead you in the right direction. You will gain a whole new relationship with the Jewish people. You will find yourself criticizing their political viewpoints, praising their unity in defeating the Arabs, and randomly pointing them out whenever they appear on television. But you will also find yourself with a new warmth in your heart that never existed before, a warmth that exists for a homeland unrealized, a national potential waiting to be unleashed. You will realize that you start saying Palestine whenever possible. And if you have been truly and fully infected with the Palestinian bug, you will notice that whenever you hear the word, you will get butterflies in your stomach, just like the rest of us do. White Americans are not the only victims, however. On my last trip to Palestine, I noticed Israelis smoking hookahs and saying Yallah. Our aura is contagious. Israelis might try to pretend like we don't exist, but it's futile. We and our cultural awesomeness aren't going anywhere. Just ask Mark. You guys remember, I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of people who probably follow Palestine all the time, right? So this is like crack to me, all you people here. I don't need to explain anything. You guys remember a few years ago when Benjamin Netanyahu went to the UN and held up the bomb. Okay. This is called Bibi Entertains Us at the UN, September 2012. This week, Benjamin Netanyahu delivered a speech in front of the General Assembly of the United Nations. As a Palestinian, I tuned in. It's my duty. Plus, I say the guy's name at least 3 to 4 times a day. I won't tell you how or why, but the least I could do was listen to his speech. He started innocently enough, referring to how Israel is the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, as well as their deep history and acumen. No problem. He called Jerusalem Israel's eternal capital. Whatever. He said the Jewish people will never be uprooted again. Fine. We restored our independence, he said. Okay. Well, Israel wanting to restore its independence from 3,000 years ago is kind of like me saying I'd like to restore my girlfriend from college. It might sound nice, but she already married somebody else. But I always knew that Benjamin Netanyahu was a proud Israeli who used history to make political points, so there was nothing surprising here. Then Bibi began to describe the current war between the modern and the medieval. He told us that modernity seeks a bright future in which the rights of all are protected, while medievalism, that's us, seeks to suppress knowledge and glorify death. He spoke of Israeli inventions and praised Israeli innovation. I will note, as my dad constantly reminded me, that the medieval Islamic world did invent algebra, chemistry, universities, chess, shampoo, surgery, numbers, and coffee. Yes, Starbucks is entirely our fault. And we invented flying carpets too, so take that. Of course, according to him, the war between modernity and medievalism is most stark in the Middle East. And Israel is, of course, on the side of modernity. Translations, Jews, good, Arabs, Muslims, bad. I always knew Bibi didn't like Arabs and Muslims. It's actually a job requirement for any Israeli prime minister, so there was nothing shocking here. Netanyahu then delved into the Palestinian-Israeli peace process. In order to solve the conflict, he told us all parties should avoid libelous speeches and unilateral declarations. But he has repeatedly called us a demographic threat. That's pretty defamatory. And Israel unilaterally pulled out of Gaza and blockaded it. It unilaterally built more settlements and unilaterally united Jerusalem. It even unilaterally declared hummus the Israeli national snack. I don't remember any negotiations about that. He also said, quote, we have to sit together, negotiate together, and reach a mutual compromise in which a demilitarized Palestinian state recognizes the one and only Jewish state. It kind of sounds like he's already decided the outcome of the mutual compromise. And I always wondered, why does he say it's the one and only Jewish state? Is anyone else making a claim? But I always knew Bibi held monumental double standards when it came to Palestinians and Israelis, so none of that stuff startled me. But he couldn't stop talking about those backwards Muslims. He told us that the medieval forces of radical Islam want to end the modern world, namely Israel, Europe, and America. Perhaps he doesn't know that those Arabs and Muslims hold a party whenever they get a visa to the United States and Europe. And if they get a green card, they set off fireworks. Maybe he thinks they're just having one last big strategy session before they set sail, getting one final lesson on explosives. He compared radical Islam to the Nazis. Now that's just unfair. Muslims don't have any kind of universal hand gestures unless you count that circular hand motion they make when they're fighting about who should go through the door first. Then he started talking about nuclear weapons and Iran. Quote, to understand what the world would be like with a nuclear-armed Iran, just imagine the world with a nuclear-armed Al-Qaeda. Really, Al-Qaeda, we're supposed to believe the group that conducts military exercises on a playground could build a nuclear weapon? They can't even run a good boot camp. And let's be real, Al-Qaeda is not doing that well. Every week CNN tells me, today, a military strike killed Al-Qaeda's number 2 man. There's really no job security in that organization. He spoke of how close Iran is to making a nuclear bomb and how the world must ask now to stop them. Then he claimed to know how close Iran is to achieving its goal of world destruction. Then Bibi said, I brought a diagram. Now this was different. Israelis are not known for diagrams. They usually hate maps and annoying things like borders. This was totally new for me. I started to get interested. Now, I always thought Netanyahu was a little imbalanced, but I didn't think he was completely insane until he held up a Roadrunner-like drawing of a circle with a squiggly black line coming out of it and said, this is a bomb, and this is a fuse. But I have to call Bibi out on this lie as well. I'm an Arab, and I can tell you with some authority that is not what a bomb looks like. Of course, Bibi actually knows exactly what a bomb looks like, and he knows what a nuclear bomb looks like too. It is estimated that Israel could have up to 400 nuclear bombs in its arsenal, but the only democracy in the Middle East has a policy of opacity when it comes to its nuclear program. In other words, no one gets to know anything about Israel's nuclear program, but everyone has to know everything about Iran's. Israel has refused to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and in case anyone was wondering, every state in the modern world has signed it. In fact, almost every medieval Islamic nation has signed it too. I have an important piece of paper I'd like to show the Prime Minister of Israel, and there's something I need to tell him about it. This is a treaty, and this is where you sign it. Okay, what time is it? 10 minutes, great. Okay, cool. A couple years ago, yes, just about 2 years ago, you'll know this for sure if you're Palestinian, and you probably will know it even if you're not, but there was a Palestinian drafted into the NFL. Does anybody remember this? We Palestinians were very excited that day. This is called There's a Palestinian in the NFL. Palestinian Americans are split on a fundamental American issue, football. Many from my father's generation of immigrants are simply confused by the whole concept. They came from a land and time where football meant kicking a ball with your foot into a goal. Trying to divorce them from this word association is extremely difficult. The children of these immigrants, like me, who grew up in this country, see football as the beautiful American tradition that it is. I have tried to explain to my father that a touchdown is basically a goal, and that each team is trying to get more touchdowns than the other. I told him it is soccer with helmets, or football with helmets, if to you football actually means soccer. But football is also a violent sport with fierce impacts, armor, and screaming. It brings men together in a passionate, non-sexual way. And it includes barely dressed women on the sidelines jumping up and down, and sometimes even climbing on top of each other. Once my father learned these things, he became interested. Odey Abushi is a Palestinian American. A few months ago, he was drafted by the New York Jets to play professional football. I'm sure this was a dream come true for him. Of course, we Palestinians all immediately heard the news. We have a secret email list. We were proud. Most of us didn't know him, but we were proud. Then last week, Yahoo Sports published an article by Adam Waxman accusing Odey of anti-Semitic activism. At just about the same time, an employee of Major League Baseball, Jonathan Mayle, tweeted, "The New York Jets are a disgrace of an organization. The Patriots have Aaron Hernandez, who had just been accused of murder. The Jets have Odey Abushi. Of course, Aaron Hernandez is a star NFL tight end who has recently been arrested for murder. Odey is just a Palestinian." Adjacent to Ramallah lies the city of El Bireh. Thousands of El Bireh's descendants live in America. A couple weeks ago, they held a convention in a hotel outside of Washington, D.C. It was basically a big family reunion. And I really mean that. When cousins start marrying each other, family reunions need to be held in a hotel. A big hotel. But on the bright side, Ancestry.com loves Palestinian customers. Coming up with their report takes about 5 minutes. Dear customer, your father is your mother's cousin. Your grandfathers are brothers, which also means they are each your great uncle. Your father is your father, but he is also your first cousin removed. Same goes for your mother. Your brothers and sisters are also each your second cousin, and you are also, in fact, your own cousin. Enjoy the rest of your day. Odey Abushi attended this convention as an invited guest. Waxman used his attendance as evidence of Odey's anti-Semitism. Odey was not quoted, and none of his actions were detailed. He was just a guest at a big family reunion. See, to supporters of Israel like Mayle and Waxman, and to many Jews, unfortunately, Palestinians are by default anti-Semitic. But labeling us all as anti-Semitic is simply inaccurate. I can easily prove that I'm not an anti-Semite. I love bagels, cheesecake, and Seinfeld. And Jews invented the weekend. So these are my kind of people. But using the anti-Semitic label so freely also does something else. It kills the conversation. Once someone is called a vicious racism, his opinion is less worthy. And so is his existence. And for Palestinians, we cannot end the conversation. We need to tell our story. So maybe those calling us anti-Semitic know exactly what they're doing. Now, I wouldn't mind being labeled if only we're done accurately. Palestinian Americans are some of the most successful and most educated citizens living in this country. We always do extremely well in whatever path we choose. Now, that might be because we don't have a country to go back to, but whatever. So none of us were surprised that Odey made it all the way to the NFL. We expect excellence. Plus, for his own sake, he had to succeed. I don't even want to imagine what his mom would have done if he didn't get drafted. Being Palestinian follows us wherever we go and whatever we do. O'Day is now in the limelight. He will be seen as suspect. Fans will hold up signs. His existence will be highly politicized. Everything he does, good or bad, will have a lot of gravity to it. For every person praising him, there will be at least one other expressing outrage. He is a Palestinian. And so he will be seen as some sort of threat to the working order of things. And whether he likes it or not, his entry into the NFL will mean more than maybe it should. He is not a football player. He is a Palestinian football player. And being Palestinian is unyielding. There are no breaks. And just when it looks like everything's okay, someone calls us barbaric, resentful, hateful, or invented. Our relatives who live in Palestine have to deal with daily killing and humiliation. Those of us who live everywhere else have to explain it. Basically, Palestinians spend most of our time trying to explain to everyone that we are, in fact, human beings. But don't feel bad for us. When we meet each other, we get excited. We share stories. We laugh and cry at the same things. When we say goodbye, we can't wait to see each other again. We have a connection to one another that no one else could ever understand. And so, O'Day, when you were drafted, we were all drafted. And while my dad might not really understand football, he understands that. Okay, I'll read one more, and then we'll get into a discussion or questions. Last year, a little less than a year ago, when the Israelis were bombarding Gaza, I was watching the news, as I do. For those of you who don't know, Arabs, watching the news is like a social activity for us. We make popcorn, and we call our friends, and we watch the news. Because we're on it all the time. It's like a reality show for us. And so, I just got done making a documentary called We're Not White, because as you know, Arabs are technically classified as white by the United States government. And, we're not white. Although I wish we were, because it seems really awesome. And they're not, there are no white experts on TV. There are no one has to explain why their whiteness caused them to do, whatever they did. And so, we're not white, but I wish we were. But anyway, we watch the news all the time. And I was watching the news every day, as most Palestinians were during the war on Gaza last summer. And I was watching all the spokesmen come speaking for Israel. And so I wrote an article called The Accents of the Israeli Team, August 2014. For many, following all the ins and outs of the Israeli-Palestinian saga can be confusing. Hamas did that. The Israeli army did that. They started the war. No, they started the war. They broke the ceasefire. No, they broke the ceasefire. Hamas belongs to them. No, it belongs to them. It is all very overwhelming. One thing, however, is glaringly clear. American journalists seem to have a much easier time having conversations with Israeli officials than they do with their Palestinian counterparts. The reason is obvious. All of Israel's official mouthpieces speak perfect, unaccented English. And why wouldn't they? After all, they are not from Israel. Peter Lerner is the foreign press spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces. He was born in London in 1973. He immigrated to Israel in 1985. Hebrew, one of the two official languages of Israel, yes, Arabic is an official language too because Israel is a democracy. Hebrew is his second language. You might have wondered why Peter Lerner sounds more like a spokesperson for the Queen than he does for Israel. Why wouldn't he? He is, after all, a foreigner in the land of Israel. Dori Gold is a diplomat who has served in many Israeli governments. He was once Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. He is currently the president of an Israeli think tank in Jerusalem. He was born in Connecticut, attended high school in Massachusetts, and earned a BA, MA, and PhD from Columbia University in New York City. He has appeared on television numerous times during Israel's latest offensive, defending and explaining the policies of the Netanyahu government. As you might expect, his English is perfect. Mr. Gold lives in Jerusalem. He might even live in a house that once belonged to Palestinians. Of course, I don't know that for sure, but trust me, in Jerusalem, it's a safe bet. You might have wondered why Dori Gold sounds like a Yankees fan. Why wouldn't he? He is, after all, a foreigner in the land of Israel. Mark Regev is the official spokesman of the Netanyahu government. In 1960, he was born in Australia, where he grew up and finished college. He immigrated to Israel at the age of 22, where he began his graduate studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He has remained in his adopted homeland ever since. Hebrew is also his second language. You might have wondered why the official Israeli spokesman sounds more like Crocodile Dundee. Why wouldn't he? He is, after all, a foreigner in the land of Israel. Michael Oren was most recently Israel's ambassador to the United States. He was born in upstate New York. He earned his MA and PhD from Princeton University in New Jersey. He immigrated to Israel in his mid-20s. He has lectured at dozens of American campuses. He articulately defends Israeli policies on American televisions across our great country. Well, he is usually articulate, if you don't count his recent interview on MSNBC when he suddenly and quite conveniently couldn't hear Andrea Mitchell when she asked him about reports that Israel had eavesdropped on John Kerry last year. But even when he flusters and fumbles, he speaks eloquent East Coast English. You might have wondered why Michael Oren sounds like an American university professor. Why wouldn't he? He is, after all, a foreigner in the land of Israel. Mickey Rosenfeld is the Israeli police spokesperson to the foreign press. He speaks English flawlessly. That's because he is English. Yep, he was born in England and grew up there. He is blonde and blue-eyed. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. He grew up with Duran Duran, the English Premier League, and bland, terrible food. The garlicky cuisine of his new homeland must have come as a bit of a shock to him. You might have wondered why Mickey Rosenfeld sounds like Piers Morgan. Why wouldn't he? He is, after all, a foreigner in the land of Israel. Ron Dermer is Israel's current ambassador to the United States of America. He has been all over CNN in recent weeks. He attended the University of Pennsylvania before moving to Israel in his 20s. He was born in 1971 in Miami Beach, where both his father and brother were once the mayor there. He is one of Netanyahu's closest advisors, writing many of his speeches in English, I assume. He is highly educated, yet for some reason he still sounds obnoxious and rude during just about every interview. You might have wondered why Ron Dermer sounds like a whiny kid from Florida. Why wouldn't he? He is, after all, a foreigner in the land of Israel. Now, I don't really mind that all of these Israeli messengers speak perfect English in American, Australian, and British accents. However, I do mind that with all that Western education, they still can't pronounce Hamas. They insist on continuing to say Hamas. This is just offensive. Hamas is already frightening enough with its crappy rockets, ancient rifles, and hooded militants. Do they really need to have to add that chilling "cha" sound? Do they do that with all H sounds? It would make some nursery rhymes seem just downright scary. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. It just sounds alarming. Come on, guys. It's Hamas. Like happy. Just think that. Hamas, happy. Hamas, happy. See, it works. In any case, this is the cast of characters acting as Israel's cheerleaders to the American public, justifying racial supremacy, ethnic cleansing, and indiscriminate bombing campaigns definitely sounds better when it's done in an accent we can all relate to. But I'm sure every American listening to them still wonders why all these Israelis sound like the next door neighbor. Why wouldn't they? They are, after all, foreigners in the land of Israel, foreign colonist settlers. Okay, thank you. I'll take... Thanks.
we're happy to take questions to Amer, but please wait until you get the microphone so you can talk into the microphone. And those of you online can tweet your questions to @Palestine Center.
Oh, that's cool. And like we can instantly answer them,
Yes.
the tweets? Oh, that's awesome.
The tweets and bring
Okay.
them. Yeah.
So there's a microphone? Oh. Can somebody please hand me that bottle of water there's a bottle all the way back there, Samira. I left one back there. Yes, ma'am.
I'm one of those Palestinized people, not through marriage, but because I lived in Gaza for a while.
Palestinianized.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have
Contagious.
I have a project in Gaza called We Are Not Numbers. It's for developing English writers in Gaza. They're all in their late teens, early 20s, and we pair them up with mentors, a lot of them Palestinians, others not, to help develop their storytelling, their ability to tell their own story, improve their English, give them a network of people. And humor, I have two questions for you that I actually want to bring your answers back to them.
Okay.
One is, they have a very difficult, the writers I work with have a very difficult time, one, even talking about themselves, because either they think, oh, I'm not interesting, they think they have to talk in big dramatic terms about the suffering in general, and their own story they find sort of mundane or embarrassing because it's their own poverty, their own, so talking with themselves. And then humor, it's seeing things as funny, or thinking that we want to see things as, they think they have to tell of the big suffering. And I've been trying to tell them that sometimes the mundane details that are more engaging. So I'm curious as to how you started seeing things that way. And what would you say if you were going to talk to some young writers there about how to, if they want to discover their humorous side, how do you start that habit of trying to see things that way? Or, do you have any advice as to they might, because it's really sort of hard for them to do that.
Yeah. Well, what was your name?
Yeah.
Pam? And you go to Gaza?
Yeah.
As a Palestinian, I feel weird asking a white person this, but can you get me into Gaza with you? Because I would like to go. It's been one of my dreams to go there and do a comedy show, but they won't let me in. I believe that no matter who you are and no matter what sort of situation you're in, there's probably at least 5 to 10 funny things that happen to you every day. And for Palestinians, it's probably more like 50 or 100 funny things that happen just because of like I said, the alternate universe, weird things that we see and have to go through. But it is kind of a choice, right, to decide to start seeing things in a way that can make you laugh and that you think can make other people laugh. And I would say probably the same things really that make you cry can be seen in a way that make you laugh. And that's a choice, and it is an exercise. For me, it was not, there was no aha moment or anything like that. It's just a matter, I'm lucky that I grew up with parents who are just happy and cheerful, while at the same time, of course, always being very vocal. My parents were activists, and always being very vocal and proud of being Palestinian and what that means. But there is a power, I think, in humor that is not only, like I said before, can send a message in a certain way, but also is therapeutic. So that when I'm on stage, it's therapeutic for me to talk about these things. Even though I might do the same show 100 times, every time is different for me because of the people that are there. And it is therapeutic because I think if I didn't have that, I'd be much angrier than I am. And I have every right to be. They stole our land, I use that as a mantra now, though, to kind of give myself perspective. That if I'm having a bad day, I say, well, they stole our land. And if I got over that, then I can, then we can deal with my iPhone not working or, whatever the problem is today. So there is, I think everything can be flipped, The same circumstances that make you sad or really depressed, I think can be flipped. And if you can find a way to get me into Gaza, I'll come and do a workshop with them. Definitely. I would definitely Skype with them, for sure. Yes. Yes, sir.
Who are the other two comedians that are going to be at the Kennedy Center?
So there's 4 of us total, actually. And it's me and a comedian named Mike Ismail. Mike is not his real name. His name is Mahmoud, but he tells white people Mike. It makes them feel better. And so he's from Virginia Beach, and he's been doing comedy for about 20 years. He'll be performing Friday night at the Kennedy Center. Also, another comedian named Saeed Dura, who is local to the D.C. area. He'll be performing as well. He's been doing comedy for about 6 or 7 years. And a comedian, a female comedian from Chicago named Muna Abu Rimshan, who she's been doing comedy for about 4 or 5 years. She started out performing with me a while ago, and she'll be performing as well. As far as I know, she's the first Arab American. I think we're all the first Arab American comics to perform at the Kennedy Center, but she's definitely the first Arab American woman comic to perform at the Kennedy Center. And we're all Palestinian. So the theme of the show is Palestinians, making you laugh on a stage, and being Palestinian can make us smile. So we'll be 4 comedians all together. The 3 of them will be performing, and then I'll be performing. I'll be closing out the show. Will you be there, sir?
Possibly.
Well, Friday night at 7:30 in the Kennedy Center. I think it's right across the street. Friday night, 7:30. Don't be late at the Kennedy Center. $30. $30 at the Kennedy Center. I mean, come on. Oh, well, if you can't, I can. Let me know. Yes, sir.
Amer, I'm Phil. I just live up the block. Can I tell a white man's joke?
You have the microphone.
Okay. This is taken from George Pelicanos, who writes crime dramas about Washington, D.C.
Not familiar.
Anyway, he's talking about ancient Greece. Ancient Greece, a land where men were men and sheep were nervous.
Does this happen to anyone else? Does this? Now, as a comedian, I have found that this happens to me a lot. That Phil, right? Yeah. Phil, and that somehow I bring out this is something very similar to being a Palestinian and being a comedian. I bring out something in people. I don't think this happens to like doctors or engineers or anything else, any other profession really. It's just something about comedians. I do shows after every show, Arab guys, usually older Arab guys, will walk up to me and say, Amer, very funny. You did a great job. I have a joke for you. And they always want to tell me a joke. And they always say the same thing. They always say, and you can use it. You can have it. And I never do because it's a terrible joke. And of course, we should tell our own jokes on stage. But I've noticed that, so as a comedian, I have a different rapport, like immediately, for some reason, with people, and they feel comfortable to do things around me that I think they normally wouldn't do. And as a Palestinian, the same thing happens. So I get weird reactions from sometimes I bring out the racist in people, and I don't mean to do it, okay? So I was in the airport a couple years ago, and the flight was delayed. Not because of me, but the flight was delayed. So we went into the airport bar, and you're alone in the airport, right? You're alone, you're bored, you're by yourself. And so there's this, we walked into the airport bar, and there's a white guy sitting next to me. And you just start talking with people because, you're alone. And so he says to me, what's your name? And I said, Amer. And he said, wow, that is a very interesting name. Where are you from? I said, I'm from Michigan. He said, no, where are you from? This is what white people say when they want to find out where you're really from. He said, where are you from? I said, oh, sorry. I'm from Palestine. I'm Palestinian. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, really? I said, yeah. I didn't say I was a unicorn, I said, I'm Palestinian. We're real. We're on the news. And he looked over both of his shoulders, and he looked back at me, and he said, that's really cool. I said, why? He said, because I hate Jewish people too. And I said, hey, man, that's racist. Okay, it's racist of you to assume that I'm a racist because of my race. That's racist. And he said, fine, you mean you don't hate all Jewish people? I said, no, I'm just saying that's racist. No, we don't hate Jewish people. We just have, this is something we have to explain too, like with this conversation. Are there any Jews here? Probably. Yeah. Okay, sir. What's your name? You don't remember? That's probably a good idea here. But I need you to send a message to, like, the Jewish Americans, do you guys like have an email list or something? Just send a message. I want to send a message to the whole world. We Palestinians, we don't hate Jews. We just have like a complicated relationship with the Jewish people. And we're schizophrenic, Palestinians, we are. We don't know how to answer the question that white people ask us all the time. They say, do you hate Jewish people? Of course not. Do you like them? Of course not. Like, we don't know what to say. We're really the same. In Arabic, we call them ulad amna, our cousins. We're the same. Hairy, big nose, crazy mom. It's the same thing. The only difference is they're chosen by God, and we are chosen by the FBI. It's the only difference. But we're the same. And so, yeah, Phil, these things happen to me, man. It's just weird. I don't know what it is. Just the comedian and the Palestinian thing brings out something, even with Israeli soldiers. But is there any other questions before I get onto any other stories about Israeli soldiers? Yes, ma'am. Dorothy, right? Oh, wait for the microphone. Wait for the microphone.
Yeah, you want to tell my joke?
No.
Well, I won't say it. But I'm really sort of surprised that you draw a distinction between Palestinians and white people.
Okay.
I've never heard that before. Do you draw the same distinction between white people and Jews? I mean, you're from the same place.
Well, I'm not a Jew, so I don't have the
No,
liberty.
I mean,
I might have been a long time ago. I probably were. We all probably were.
No, I mean, are they not white either?
Again,
like
that's not.
Palestinians?
Well, I mean, look, I say it like I would say this, just
Yeah.
because I believe in agency, right? I don't have any right. There was a time in this country, I believe, if you look back, that Jews were not considered white.
That's right.
But I think today they are, socially. But Arabs definitely are not.
Well, I made a mistake. I thought you were white.
Oh, really? I'm not white. No. I'm not white in what white people mean as white. I mean, the only test that really matters is if white people think you're white.
I understand. Now.
Okay, like I mean white like George Bush, white. I don't mean white like this. I mean white like.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Being white is a beautiful thing. It means that nobody cares that you're white, right? So I'm an Arab comedian. As an Arab comedian, if I go do a show at a comedy club, if I'm not funny, that crowd won't go see the next Arab comedian because they think, well, I saw that one Arab comedian, they're all not funny. We can mess it up for each other. Barack Obama is the black president. If Barack Obama has a scandal, like a real scandal, not like a personal scandal, he has a kid out there or something, and it gets out on the news. If something like that happens, there can never be a black president ever again, okay? They're probably not going to elect another black president anyway, but there can never be, right? But George Bush started a fake war, like fake, imaginary, okay? And 4,000 Americans at least died. But it didn't stop John McCain from running for president. Bill Clinton, okay? Every day in the White House for who knows how long, and he would still be president, actually. I think if people could elect Bill Clinton, they would still elect Bill Clinton to be president. But he didn't mess it up for Mitt Romney. Right? So the white guys can't mess it up for each other.
I got it.
So that's what being white really means. But everyone thinks everything's okay because we have a black president. But the really way you want to understand it is this. Barack Obama proved that a black guy could become president if he went to Columbia and Harvard, and if he is a law professor, and if he's written 3 books, and if his name is Barack, it's not like Tyrone or something like that, and if he's from Hawaii and Kansas, not from Cleveland or whatever, and if he's half white, and if he's the best speaker we've ever heard in our lives, then a black guy can become president. George W. Bush proved that any freaking white guy can become president. So that's what it really means.
Okay, I just had
Sorry.
another question. There are certain aspects of your humor which is very much like Jewish humor used to be.
Yes.
I'm just because it goes back on yourself.
Yes.
Is Israeli humor like that anymore, or do they don't poke fun at themselves anymore?
I don't follow Israeli humor, other than the Israeli humor that happens to me when I'm,
No, I'm just
there with
curious
them.
whether-
But I don't know. But I'm kind of not joking when I say that we're the same people. I don't think that we're that different. And I think Edward Said said one time that we are the victims of the victims. So I don't really see much difference between us, other than the stark fact that they stole our land and they're colonizing us, and we're trying to make them stop. But if you go back further than that, we're very similar. But yeah, I think a lot of Jewish humor came from pain, and ours does too. It's just ironic that our pain is caused by them. Yes, ma'am. She's the boss, so.
Amer, you've performed in the United States and in the Arab world, in
Yes.
Palestine and several Arab countries. Can you tell us what the audiences are like in the Arab countries versus here, or in Palestine versus here, and how do you change your humor? What kinds of reactions do you get?
Well, luckily, because of the power of America and the internet and YouTube and these kinds of things, I think exponentially more people speak English in the Arab world than maybe 30 or 40 years ago. So going there is an option for me, performing in English. I perform sometimes a little bit in Arabic when I'm there, maybe just a punchline or a few jokes that you have to know English and Arabic to understand. But basically I do the same jokes and the same humor. There's always like lines that you have to be careful. I mean, as any artist, but I can just speak as a comedian. I've learned over time that I don't decide what's funny; they decide what's funny. So I'm kind of introducing something to them, and I hope that they think it's funny. But if they don't laugh, it's not their fault; it's my fault, because either I didn't deliver it in a funny way, or I should have never told that joke in front of these people. So, yeah, there's differences. I mean, not only in the Middle East, I mean here. So if I'm going to perform at a comedy club in New York City, it might be different than when I get invited to a mosque, during Ramadan. It just might be a little different. But the themes, the ideas are the same. It just might get a little, sanitized in some ways, or sometimes some jokes just don't make it in. But I don't censor myself because I'm afraid of the one thing a comedian can't do, I think, is so if I think there's a certain joke that is too much for a certain crowd, I just won't tell it. I won't try to change it too much and then tell it, because then it comes out in a way that it's not supposed to come out. And so then it seems dishonest. And I think, if anything, a comedian is like in many ways, doing comedy is very unique in the sense that you are the writer, the performer, the composer, the everything. Okay, and there is unlike with, let's say, a musician, might go up and perform a recital to a piece of music composed by somebody else, and that's totally accepted. And a singer might sing something that was written and composed by somebody else. But there's kind of this understood relationship with the comedian that what he's telling you is him. He wrote that. He's not saying somebody else's jokes. He's telling you about himself or herself and his own experiences and his own point of view of the world. In that sense, honesty is paramount. Honesty, transparency, vulnerability, these things are paramount. If the crowd thinks for a second that you're not being genuine, then you lost them, even if you're being funny. The same thing is, this is the same kind of thing that we use as Palestinians, right? We're kind of genuinely telling our stories. Like, this happened to us. It's not hypothetical. I happen to be doing it with jokes. But I think being Palestinian, hearing all these stories, and just the stuff that happens just makes it, for me, easy to do it through humor. I mean, just dealing with the soldiers in Tel Aviv. I mean, has anybody here ever flown into Tel Aviv airport? Okay, so for those of you who don't know, when we Palestinians fly in a Tel Aviv airport, there is like a VIP room for us, and we're allowed to stay there as long as we want. And so I was there a few years ago. Now, my parents are both Palestinian. My dad is from Nazareth, like Jesus. That's what I tell white people. And my mom is half from Nazareth and half from a city called Akka. And so they're both Palestinian. They met in America. And my dad is Christian, and my mom is Muslim. Now, this is like forbidden in our culture, and this is the result. So in any case, and so I went. So I went to. I was in the VIP room one time for 8 hours, and the soldier. Finally, it's my turn to talk to the soldier, and he says to me, as anyone might know, as they usually say, he says to me, "What is your father's name?" And I said, "George," because that's my dad's name, George. He said, "What is your father's name?" And I said, Ilyas, because that's my father's name. Now, for anyone who knows Arabic names very well, you know that these are two like very Christian names. Super duper Christian names. You can open a church with George and Ilyas anywhere in the world. So then he said to me, "What is your mother's name?" And my mom's name is Anan, so I said Anan. Then he said, "What is your mother's father's name?" And I said, "Oh, Muhammad." And he got very confused. He said, "So are you Christian or Muslim?" I said, whatever. He said, no, I need to put it in the computer. Are you Christian or Muslim? I said, "Listen, man, in my house, we celebrated everything, Christmas, Eid, Easter, Eid again." I said, we even celebrated Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We didn't give we just celebrated everything. I said, "Put Jew in your computer. Isn't that better for me? Put Jew in your computer. I don't have to deal with this anymore." And he started laughing, and I started laughing. And he said to me, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Nazareth," like Jesus. And I said to him, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Tel Aviv." I said, "No, where are you from?" All right, thanks, everybody. I'll be over here with my book. If anybody wants a book, they're $20. Don't try to bargain down. Arabs, I see you in the front row. Don't try to bargain down. Thank you so much.